I'll be right there. As soon as I catch this Pokemon.
Okay. So if you'll recall, the first 3 chapters went really, for the most part, first 3 chapters dealt with here's how we got to where we are.
Yeah.
Okay. And so now Moses is going to begin to talk about the commands that God has given. Remember, we've said before that Deuteronomy means the second law. Okay. And so what it is it is a re-giving of the law of Moses. Okay.
By Moses.
By Moses. Okay. So the law was given at the beginning of their journey. They've traveled. There's a whole new generation. And so now he's going in and completely telling them. Okay. So chapter 4, verse 1 begins, and now, O Israel, listen to the statutes and the rules that I am teaching you, and do them that you may live, and go in and take possession of the land that the Lord, the God of your fathers, is giving you. Okay. So listen, so you remember. Okay. Now notice once again, as we have been dealing with so often in these first 5 books of the Bible, remember.
Yes.
Okay. You shall not add to the word that I command you, or take from it, that you may keep the commandments of the Lord your God that I command you. So don't add rules.
Don't take any away.
Don't take any away.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this brings up an interesting discussion, because we know by the time of Jesus, they had added a bunch of rules.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, the way they termed it was, we set a set of standards around the law so that you didn't even get close to breaking the law. However, what does this say?
Don't ever take away.
So they broke the command
by
trying to keep people from breaking the command. Now, there is a level here where you could make a case, I think, that it says don't add commands that I'm not giving you, means don't go making rules that I haven't forbidden. Start forbidding things I haven't forbidden. Okay. However, I think it certainly applies at least for the most part with this whole discussion of that edge around the law. Okay. But on the other side, don't take away anything. Okay. So on that one, we have to remember that there's a famous story about Thomas Jefferson, that Thomas Jefferson would go in, and as he would read his Bible, he would find a place that he didn't like, and he'd just cut that part out.
Like a lot of cult leaders do that.
But literally, you can go to the, I think it's the Jefferson Memorial, and there is a copy of his Bible, and it's full of holes.
We had a preacher, and I think he said the Mormon Bible. He said, this in the Bible said, tear 12th page out. You know, he give the example of just adding and taking away and stuff.
And so the idea here, and I want to make sure we say this, there are 3 or 4 books within the discussion of the Bible that have this specific admonition. Okay. The book of Daniel says you'll be cursed if you add to or take away. Revelation says you'll be cursed if you add to or take away. But here, as the law is being given, don't add to it, don't take away from it. Just give the commands I've given you. Okay. The reason is because I know what I've commanded you, and that's what I've commanded you, and you need to obey. Not hem-haw about whether you should obey this or put special emphasis on this thing that I didn't.
Or completely certain things out or whatever.
Right. And by the way, churches still do that.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've seen a lot of clips about some
bunch of the heads of the different churches around the world wanting to gather on Mount Sinai to completely rewrite the Ten Commandments.
which is
Like-
dumb.
Like, you can't.
But it can also be much less obvious than that. Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty
Translation,
obvious.
kind of reword some of it.
Mhm. A good, maybe an appropriate example is this. There are churches that in the space of the way they do worship have said, you can't do this during worship, even though God never forbid. Hey, they set a standard that God has not set.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Like the Church of Christ not allowing.
Music. Okay.
Really? I didn't even know there was a church that did that.
They allow music, like.
No instruments.
Oh.
Instruments.
They two church Christ here, one allowed Sunday school and one did not.
Mhm. And so,
That's weird.
there are denominational discussions that, and I'm not saying that it's all sin. What I'm saying is that what God is trying to tell the children of Israel is, you're not the one in charge of making the rules. I am.
Yeah,
Okay.
so don't change stuff.
Right. Okay. Verse 3. Your eyes have seen what the Lord did at Baal Peor. For the Lord your God destroyed from among you all the men who followed the Baal of Peor. And now remember, I use the term Baal. The actual pronunciation is Baal. Okay. And a Baal is a pagan god.
Okay.
Okay. And it is the Baal of Peor, which is a place.
I think I see something about that too.
Uh-huh. Okay. So Baal is the name that throughout that part of the world is given to the local deities of the weather.
Gotcha.
So Nineveh had its own Baal.
Which is just a set of deities.
Right. Well, no, it's one particular deity
Oh,
in their pantheon of pagan.
Okay.
Okay. The one that I learned somewhat recently is that in Greek mythology, the actual original name is Zeus Baal.
Really?
Yeah, he's the Greek version of the Baal
Oh, gotcha.
guy.
Gotcha.
Typically god of the weather.
Yeah.
Why? Because rain helps the growth of your crops.
Yeah.
So the god of thunder is always a very important deity.
Yeah, because he brings the rain.
He brings the rain. Okay. And usually has a partner who is the god of sexuality or whatever.
I've always known them to be goddesses, but okay.
Goddesses, yeah. But they are usually partners.
Yes.
Okay. So don't worship them.
Gotcha.
Okay. You worship Baal of Peor, and I punished you, so don't do it again. Okay. But you who held fast to the Lord your God are all alive today. See, I have taught you statutes and rules as the Lord my God commanded me, that you should do them in the land that you are entering to take possession of. Okay. Remember that when you disobeyed the law that I had told you before about idolatry, that bad things happened, but the ones who chose to obey, those bad things didn't happen to.
Yeah.
The same thing's going to be true for you in the land.
Yeah. Nothing's changing. Just
Nothing-
remember that.
So verse 6, keep them and do them, for that will be your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples, who, when they hear all these statutes, will say, okay. So notice, as you keep the law, as you do what you're supposed to, then this will be the reaction of the nations. Surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has a God so near to it as the Lord our God is to us, whenever we call upon him. Okay, so here is the interesting part of this discussion. Okay, what the Lord is saying to them is this: if you will obey my statutes so that I can be close to you, then other nations will come to you because they will see you as wise and understanding. Okay, because, and this is where verse 7 comes in, what other nation has a God that dwells near to them?
None.
None. So here is a very telling discussion about what God's actual idea here is. He brings the children of Israel into the land, and as they are obedient to him, then the other nations will look and see, and they will come and want to know what Israel has that they don't have. And then Israel can tell them about their God, and then they will convert to their God. And so Israel will be a kingdom of priests that will mediate between God and other nations. That's what he had told them.
Yeah.
That was the purpose here,
That was the plan.
to have a people of his own that could be the witnesses
To all the other nations.
to all the other nations. That sounds a little familiar, doesn't it? Only now it's not a nation, it's a kingdom.
What's
Through-
the difference?
Well, we are, a nation is a geopolitical entity. In the course of Jesus, a kingdom is one who follows a king. Okay. Now, there's not a huge difference, but in the discussion of the followers of Jesus, we have been given the same mission. You follow me. You follow me with all that you are. You love me with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. You love your neighbor as yourself. You deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me. Then I will be near to you. And as the people from outside look at what I am doing in your life, they will
Flock to you.
come to you. And then your job is to be a kingdom of priests to bring them the knowledge of the one true God. It is the same thing that God intended for them.
I got a question.
Yes.
It switched from nation to kingdom when Jesus died for us, right? Because
So-
the one true king of God, right?
Yes. But the discussion of why it changes is Israel was even at certainly at this point is a earthly nation.
Yeah.
Okay. The discussion of the difference between nation and kingdom here is the fact that Jesus makes the comment. He goes, I'm not of this world. My kingdom's not of this world. We are part of a heavenly kingdom. Even though we're sojourning here, which a sojourner is one who is visiting,
Foreigner.
traveling through, a foreigner. I am so sorry.
Did we make it to some water?
Just one of those little bottles on the floor will be okay. So as we are a kingdom, we are part of a heavenly kingdom. We are also part of an earthly nation. We're part of the US. Okay. Because we're sojourners here. But our true citizenship is not in this earth, it is in heaven. So not a nation, but a kingdom. And really, they're somewhat synonymous, but in some ways, it depends on who's ruling. We have a king, so we are part of a kingdom. Okay. Then verse 8 goes, and what great nation is there that has statutes and rules so righteous as all this law that I set before you today? Verse 9, only take care. So be careful and keep your soul diligently. lest you forget the things that your eyes have seen, unless they depart from your heart all the days of your life. So now this is an interesting discussion here. How many of you have at some point heard a story or a joke or something like that, and you go, oh, I got to remember that to tell my,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but no,
And then turn around and forget it.
and then turn around and forget it.
yeah.
And watch. This is what God is getting at. Be diligent and regularly remind yourself of the law of God and of what God has done, lest you forget.
Which it's so easy to forget that stuff.
It is.
Like,
And what have we seen as we have dealt with the past 3 books?
and forgetting really quick, like,
Yeah.
In the midst of God still being present among them.
yeah, still in their camp and they're forgetting.
Okay. So keep your soul diligently, lest you forget the things your eyes have seen, unless they depart from your heart all the days of your life. Then it goes on, make them known to your children and your children's children. Okay. Now, this is a beautiful picture of this. As you remember, teach it to them, and then remember together.
Help each other not forget.
So, but the idea here is, and it's a very powerful one, also based on what has happened in the last 40 years for these people. All of these men and women who are standing here listening to Moses, their parents all died in the wilderness because of their disobedience.
Yeah.
Okay, don't be like them. Instead, obey and teach your children how to obey. And by the way, let's make sure we understand this, at least at some level, is the biggest failure that the children of Israel had. Because you go through the rest of their history until the exile, and they would have somebody come and they'd be good and there'd be a huge revival and it would last for the remainder of that generation. And then it would fall apart. Because while they did good, they didn't teach their children.
Well, you can kind of see back to the pioneer days to today, each generation's less
Yeah.
kids go to church and stuff.
Well, and you also have to deal with that's a major theme within the Bible. Abraham is an incredibly godly man. Isaac is still kind of godly, but not great. Jacob's a scoundrel until God steps into his life. And then Jacob's children, with the exception of Joseph, are horrible. Then you go in and you look at David is a very righteous man. His son starts well, but doesn't finish well. And Solomon's son is an idiot. The ability to train your children to continue to follow the Lord is one of the greatest challenges. And by the way, you can do everything you can do and still fail.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Well, you can just raise them, like me, for example. My kids all come to church after they're out on their own. They went their way, which 2 of them go and 1 don't.
So, but it is very important that you understand that this is a major element to this. Okay. Make them known to your children and your children's children. How on the day that you stood before the Lord your God at Horeb, the Lord said to me, gather the people to me, that I may let them hear my words, so that they may learn to fear me all the days that they live on the earth, and that they may teach their children so. Now, so notice, and we talked about this morning, this is talking about the coming of the 10 Commandments. Okay.
Oh, yeah, when they're. when
Now
they're
watch.
married.
Gather the people to me so they can hear me speak, so they'll learn to fear me.
Which it worked. They were all very terrified.
And that they can teach their children to fear me as well. So it goes on, and you came near to the foot of the and stood at the foot of the mountain while the mountain burned with fire to the heart of heaven, wrapped in darkness, cloud, and gloom. Then the Lord spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard the sound of words, but saw no form. There was only a voice. And he declared to you, and he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform. That is the 10 Commandments. And he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone. And the Lord commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and rules, that you might do them in the land that you are going over to possess. So notice, there is a reason why God gave them the 10 Commandments in his own voice, so they would learn how awesome he was.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That's important. So verse 15, therefore watch yourselves very carefully. Now here you're going to get a preview of next week. Since you saw no form on the day that the Lord spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire, beware lest you act corruptly by making a carved image for yourself in the form of any figure.
Oh,
the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any animal that is on the earth, the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the air, the likeness of anything that creeps on the ground, the likeness of any fish that is in the water under the earth. Now watch. Where we're going here is he's about to say, don't make an image of a created thing and equate it with me.
Because you saw no image of me, so you don't know what I look like.
Well, but there's another half to that. Why? So this is kind of the funny part of it, and it's a weird way of saying it this way. Okay. Don't equate me with something that is so far below me that I created it. Okay, so let's use a couple of ideas here. Which is greater? Okay. The atomic bomb or Oppenheimer?
Who's Oppenheimer?
The guy who created the atomic bomb.
I'd say the atomic bomb. It can do more damage.
Well,
I'd say
But
Oppenheimer. Because
the
he
one who created it. Okay, if I were to go and create a brand new type of computer that did something,
Supercomputer.
okay, the creator is always greater. Why? Because the computer then can't create me.
Unless you create a computer that's smart enough that it can learn and evolve.
Okay, but still,
It couldn't create you specifically, but it could create other
Well,
things
the sourcing.
came from you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay,
That's true.
so
Computers create more than what I visualize.
now a computer may be able to do things that I cannot do. But if I'm the one who created the computer, then I'm linked to it.
Yeah. So it's just
But I am the
you.
but I'm the creator of it. And now let me make sure I say this. I am so sorry. It's a rough analogy because guess what? I don't necessarily create. A person does not create, they invent.
It's true.
Okay. So make sure you understand. And this is the fun thing. So we talk about how incredibly intelligent the person who created the computer or invented the computer or designed the computer. He didn't have to he didn't have to create the parts that he used to create the stuff that he used to create the computer. There is a baseline of plastic and silica and all of these things in here that he used to create it. God created everything out of nothing, which means he not only created the thing, he created all the parts that make up the thing, and created all the stuff that makes up the parts that makes up the thing.
Yeah, so he created it all.
Yeah,
Okay,
it says there's nothing new under the sun, but you can take different parts to make something new and everything.
So there's an old joke or an old story about a guy who he just, and it's talking about idolatry. He goes, I'm going to make an image of you. And he goes, okay. And he goes, okay, I want you to make an image. Okay, that's fine. Yeah. He goes, so are you going to give me the stuff? No, if you're going to create an image of me, you have to make your own stuff. See, understand that that's part of the discussion of an idol. If I go out across the street and cut the tree down to make an idol,
you're not making your own.
then I am using something that God created to make a cheap image of him.
Gotcha.
So, in a way, there is a level at which it is kind of this huge insult to take a created thing that God created and then use it to make an image that you're going to worship like it's God.
Yeah.
Okay. That includes anything. Because there are people that worship the human form.
Mhm.
There are people who worship pleasure and power and all of these things. All of those things are cheap imitations of God.
Yep.
And so you're worshiping something that has no value. So, since you didn't see a form, since you don't have any idea what I look like, and by the way, you wouldn't know even if I showed you,
Yeah.
beware lest you act corruptly by making a curved image of anything. And so watch and beware that you raise your eyes to the heavens and you see the sun and the moon and the stars, all the host of heaven, and you be drawn away and bow down to them and serve them. Things that the Lord your God has allotted. Almighty sun. It's like a candle to God. He created it. Oh, great moon. It doesn't even produce its own light.
Nope.
Which, by the way, God created it to be the color it is so that it would reflect the light of the sun. If you ever go back, and it's very interesting to look at this. If you ever go back to Genesis chapter 1 and you look at the days, okay, day 1, he creates light. Day 2, he creates the water. Day 3, he creates the land, okay, and plants. I think is how that works, land and plants. On day 4 is the sun and the moon. But if you read Genesis in the original language, the word sun and the word moon do not appear. The way it is phrased in the Hebrew is he created the greater light
and the lesser light.
and the lesser light. Well, why did he do that? Why did the writer of Genesis decide that he was going to do it that way? Because the name for the sun and the moon were pagan gods.
Oh.
See, there were people that worshiped the
That's
sun and the moon,
yeah.
sun and the moon. And so he made on purpose. He did not name the sun and the moon in the passage because the the people of the day would have seen that as the God that is the Son and the God that is, oh, see, God, the great God created
the great Son, and
which, by the way, that is one of the primary discussions that you will run into in pagan mythology.
yeah, he's just the top God. There's multiple other gods.
So there is this one
super
that
special
you
God.
cannot know.
Yeah, that's kind of, that is so true.
Okay, there's this one you don't know, or that exists, and we don't really know anything unattainable. And then beyond that, then you come down and you have, for example, the discussion of Greek mythology. You have the earth and the sky.
Yeah.
And the earth and the sky create 3 groups of kids.
Yes.
And then that brings the pantheon of gods and all of this.
Yeah, we get into demigods.
So the idea is, and what God is saying is, why are you worshiping something that is not eternal? Why are you worshiping something that has something greater than it? Why are you worshiping something that, in all fairness, is not real? Okay. Now, when we talk about the pagan gods, we are often talking about, at least as far as their worship and the influence that they have in our culture, we are talking about demonic spirits pretending to be
gods,
pagan deities.
Yeah.
Okay. But they're created.
Yes.
They're less than. Okay. So, but the Lord has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Egypt, to be a people of his own inheritance, as you are to this day. Furthermore, the Lord was angry with me because of you, and he swore that I should not cross the Jordan, and that I should not enter the good land that the Lord your God is giving you for an inheritance. For I must die in this land. I must not go over the Jordan. But you shall go over and take possession of the good land. Take care lest you forget the covenant of the Lord your God, which he made with you, and make a carved image, the form of anything that the Lord your God has forbidden you. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. Okay, remember, once again, this discussion of jealousy comes from the fact that whenever you look in biblical discussion, idolatry equals adultery.
Yep.
So it is unfaithfulness. Okay, so he goes on. Verse 25, when you father children and children's children and have grown old in the land, if you act corruptly by making a carved image in the form of anything, and by doing what is evil in the sight of the Lord your God, is my word, so as to provoke him to anger, I call heaven and earth to witness against you today, that you will soon utterly perish from the land that you are going over the Jordan to possess. So it doesn't matter if it's today or if it's 100 years from now.
They're gonna be.
If you fall into idolatry, guess what? You don't got long left. And the Lord will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be left few in number among the nations where the Lord will drive you. Hey, do you remember that? That's exactly what happens. And there you will serve gods of wood and stone, the work of human hands, that they don't see, they don't hear, they don't eat, they don't smell. For from there you will seek the Lord your God, and you will find him, if you search after him with all your heart and all your soul. When you are in tribulation and all these things come upon you in the latter days, you will return to the Lord and obey his voice. For the Lord your God is a merciful God. He will not leave you or destroy you or forget the covenant with your fathers that he swore to you. There's still hope. Okay. For ask now, okay, of the days that are past. So this is what he's saying. So look back at the past and see. So ask now, look back, which were before you, since the day that God created man on earth, and ask from one end of heaven to the other, whether such a great thing as this has ever happened or was ever heard of. Did any people ever hear the voice of a God speaking out of the midst of the fire as you have heard and still live? So go back through all of history from the very beginning of the earth and see if any of these. So, and in some ways he's going, go back and look at all the mythology, all the.
But didn't somebody else hear God's voice in a burning bush?
Moses.
That was, oh God, that was okay. So
Okay.
it was these people. Okay. So no.
Okay. Or has any God ever attempted to go and take a nation for himself from the midst of another nation by trials, by signs, by wonders, and by war, by a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and by great deeds of terror?
Yeah, no, that's pretty.
All of which the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes. So go back and look through all those histories, all those mythologies, and see if God has ever done, if this has ever happened before. You are witnesses to this, something that even they don't claim. All of which the Lord your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes. To you it was shown that you might know that the Lord is God. There is no other besides him. Remember all those gods of Egypt, and God just went and just slapped them around.
Yeah.
Out of heaven, he let you hear his voice that he might discipline you. And on earth, he let you see his great fire, and you heard his words out of the midst of the fire. And because he loved your fathers and chose their offspring after them, and brought you out of Egypt with his own presence by his great power, driving out before you nations that were greater and mightier than you. So he loved your fathers, he chose them, he brought you out of Egypt with his own presence, he's walked with you, he's shown you his power over and over again, he's driven out nations that are bigger and stronger than you are. You didn't even really have to fight to bring you in, to give you their land for an inheritance as it is this day. Know therefore today, and lay it to your heart, that the Lord is God in heaven above and on the earth beneath. There is no other. Therefore, okay, now we've said this before. Anytime you see the word therefore, look back and see what it's there for. Okay, so here's what it means. Because you can look back through history and see that nothing out like this has ever happened before, that no God has ever moved in the same way, that no God has shown himself as mighty as the Lord, and it's pretty clear that he is the only God. Therefore, because he is the only God, you shall keep his statutes and his commandments, which I command you today, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, and that you may prolong your days in the land that the Lord your God is giving you for all time. because you know who God is and have seen what God has done and know that there is no other, therefore keep his commands. So then it goes, verse 41 says, then Moses set apart 3 cities in the east beyond the Jordan, that the manslayer might flee there. Anyone who kills his neighbor unintentionally without being at enmity with him in the time past, he may flee to one of these cities and save his life. Bezer in the wilderness on the tableland of the Reubenites, Ramoth in Gilead for the Gadites, and Golan in Bashan for the Manassites. So we have this moment where Moses goes in and then proclaims what are the cities of refuge on the east side of the Jordan.
In case somebody accidentally kills them.
What?
In case somebody accidentally kills
Uh-huh.
them.
So we have a little bit of a break from 41 to 49 before we continue. Okay. So it says, this is the law that Moses set before the people of Israel. These are the testimonies, the statutes, and the rules which Moses spoke to the people of Israel when they came out of Egypt, beyond the Jordan in the valley opposite Beth Peor, in the land of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who lived at Heshbon, whom Moses and the people of Israel defeated when they came out of Egypt. And they took possession of his land in the land of Og, the king of Bashan, the 2 kings of the Amorites who lived to the east beyond the Jordan, from Aroer, which is on the edge of the valley of Arnon, as far as Mount Syrian, that is Hermon, together with all the Arabah on the east side of the Jordan, as far as the Sea of Arabah, under the slopes of Pisgah. Okay. This is, in a way, we've gone through, we've seen him talk about a few of the laws. We've seen him talk about what they've done. And now there is an aside that is put here that says, here's the law. And then in verse 5, chapter 5, we begin to see the law. Okay, so it's chapter 5 starts. We're not going to go into it, but chapter 5 starts and says, and Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, hear, O Israel, the statutes and the rules that I speak in your hearing today. Okay, so chapter 5 begins. The rest of the book really goes in and he gives an entire discussion of what the law is that they are to follow. Okay. And we've mentioned that when we look at other places in the Bible, particularly in the book of Kings, and the story of Josiah, most scholars agree that the book of the law that Josiah was given was a copy of the book of Deuteronomy. Because the things that he does are things that are very specifically spelled out in the Deuteronomy law giving. Okay, so the book is incredibly important. All right, we're going to stop there. We actually almost used the full hour, but I don't think my voice is going to go much further.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
So we're going to stop right there. Let me stop this and then we'll see if we got all the stuff that we need for